Attention, Space Ranger. Today's video will contain spoilers for Lightyear.
Hey, brother!
And welcome everyone to our spoiler review of Pixar's latest, Lightyear.
Oh man, definitely a very different movie within the Pixar lineup, where this one, right out of the gate, the very first thing that you see at all is the fact that this is taking place inside of the Pixar universe as a movie in the Pixar universe.
Right, it's a movie inside a movie. The first sentence you see is the Carlin Brothers were right. It's a movie in a movie, Pixar theory confirmed. Basically.
So it's very interesting to me that this is something that Pixar was willing and even wanted to clarify right out of the gate, because I do feel like it is an indication to the idea that they were sort of like, we do need to figure out why and how it doesn't fit with everything else, which means they care about how it fits with everything else. But beyond that, as far as like what we do in terms of theory crafting, in terms of continuing the Pixar theory itself, it's a very unique one because it is like fiction within our fictional timeline.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it like recontextualizes the other characters. We're gonna get into all of it.
Let's go.
To infinity and beyond!
Okay, the movie of Lightyear basically kicks off with a like galactic star cruiser of sorts that we've sort of seen in other versions of like sci-fi space fiction.
Yeah.
Which is to say that like the occupants of the ship have been put in some type of like hyper sleep. They're out in space for like adventure type discovery purposes.
But it seems like there is some sort of sensor that will wake up one of the Space Rangers, namely Buzz, if the ship detects an upcoming planet that might contain intelligent life. And if it does, he can press a button that's like, actually, let's not go home and go check out that planet.
Yeah, like we'll change course.
Yeah.
And upon landing, they are going out and exploring. There is, in fact, a whole bunch of dangerous critters that do occupy this particular planet. But we do learn almost right away that the like Buzz Lightyear action figure that like starts in Andy's bedroom really is like this Buzz action figure kind of gets his personality from the Buzz Lightyear character like down to a T. He's pretty much going through the same like sequences. Like he even like tests the earth, and it's like he's going through and he's basically saying everything that we see him say when he wakes up for the first time in Andy's room, which is very interesting. But we also learn a couple of other kind of like unique things about Buzz, which is that like he definitely is like an absolute space ranger at heart. He really, I think, kind of like likes to work alone.
Yeah.
And the idea of completing a mission is at his core like the most central driving reason why anybody would do anything hard stop.
Like being a Space Ranger is so closely tied to his identity that he cannot veer off of it, which I think is fun the way then you like look back at Toy Buzz, because the whole time it's like you think he's upset that he's a toy or whatever, but it's like now, like I think having seen this movie and knowing that the toy is based on this character, it's like it's not as upsetting to him that he's a toy. What he's upset about is that he's not a Space Ranger.
Right.
Like I think he'd be equally upset if he found out he was a mailman,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like basically Buzz himself has come to this conclusion that the like prime objective in life and kind of like what gives your life this sense of purpose is the idea of executing the values and ideals and missions of the Space Ranger
Star Command program.
Yeah, the Star Command program. Which is very interesting, I think, as it starts to set up the themes for the movie, which is sort of this idea of like what actually gives your like life meaning and value and like what is important to you. So effectively they get marooned on this planet, and it is in fact Buzz's fault, like something that he's going to then shoulder as this massive responsibility that he himself must solve.
Right, like because he's the one who pushed the button to bring them to the planet. He is then also the one who steered the ship into the rocks that crashed the turnip, that they got them stranded and broke the hyperdrive.
Exactly. And so with that, they find themselves, sort of like coming up with an idea on how to solve this particular problem and a way to effectively get them off of the planet, which is to go and sort of run effectively like a lasso around a sun as a means to like sort of hyper something the crystal.
Yeah, it seemed like they needed some sort of like up close solar radiation to fully activate the crystal or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was their science explanation. This is how we will be doing time travel in this movie. Don't ask questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. However, what is supposed to be a 4-minute mission ultimately ends up being a 4-year mission.
Yeah, 4 minutes for Buzz, 4 years for everyone back down planet side.
Right.
Yes.
And this is kind of an interesting like perspective as to how to look again at like the theme of this story, which is to say that like Buzz in his time, you know, a handful of minutes have passed, but for, you know, his right hand person, really his commander, Alicia Hawthorne, in this 4-year period of time has like met somebody and, you know, is engaged to be married and is like, you're starting to see this idea that like, while Buzz is off on these missions, which are, you know, blink of an eye, they're all settling in a little bit. Like they're all kind of like coming to realize like, we can live here. We can have a life here.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that Buzz is so unrelenting, it seemed like over the course for him of a couple weeks.
I think it's 10 days.
Okay.
I think so because maybe 11 total.
But it's not even like years or months for him. You're talking about individual days that are passing.
Yeah. For him, the entire experience takes less than 2 weeks.
Right.
But in that time, on the planet, like a total of 63 years pass or something.
Yes.
Yeah,
is that what it ended up being?
He does the mission with Alicia 4 times.
Okay.
And that gets them 40 years. And then when he does it the one time after she dies, that's when he successfully does it, but goes fast enough that 22 years have passed.
Right.
So it's like just over 62 years have passed in total, and he has done the mission 11 times. So yeah, I guess the movie for Buzz, he only gets 11 days older.
Right.
Yeah,
which is pretty unbelievable. The other kind of unique thing, and I thought this is a very clever way to set this up, but is he has his little companion, Socks.
Yes.
And, you know, Socks is like this, like, you know, very intelligent, like
Socks
little, like,
is the best.
Socks was absolutely hilarious.
Socks is amazing.
I will tell you that going into the movie, I think as soon as I'd even seen Socks in the previews, I was like, I am very worried about this inclusion.
Yes.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels a little bit out of place. It doesn't really match the aesthetic of the rest of the film. Like it's kind of like one of those like goofy, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. Kind of like Forky, honestly, if you go back to Toy Story 4, where it's like, we're either going to love Forky or he's just going to be like the Jar Jar Binks of this story.
Right.
And for me, I at least ended up loving Forky, and similarly ended up loving Socks. Which was such a huge relief. It was a fantastic bit of comic relief throughout the entire story. But even the fact that for Buzz, he effectively set Socks on this mission to come up with the perfect ingredient dosage for the specific rainbow crystal that they create.
I know. Like, basically, honestly, even as they were like the way they are mixing together the crystallic fusion like ingredients feels like an attraction at Disney World later.
It absolutely does. It's like
go make your own hyperspace crystal,
which is going to be a Slurpee.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's exactly what it's going to be. It's go make your own hyperspace Slurpee, and you're going to get to pull the things, and it'll make you a cool drink.
Come in a beautiful souvenir cup.
I liked, that was really funny. But even it's so funny. Because, like, even the way they set it up, it's like Buzz doesn't really think or want Socks to figure out crystallic fusion. Like, he considers when he first meets Socks, this cat is mostly just sort of like an afterthought. I don't need a comfort animal.
He's even like a little insulted by it.
Yeah. It's like, I don't need this. Okay, but it's more of like a distraction chore that he gives to Socks, not like a real, I think you'll accomplish this. Like, just go, don't bother me and work on this instead. All right, I'll be back in 4 years.
Right, and then what you end up with though is, because I think he does it over the course of something like the 60 years. Now Socks has had decades. You know, it's almost like having like a supercomputer processing like how to solve a problem.
Yeah.
But like you've had a supercomputer or Socks, working on this problem for so long that it's like, it never should have been the case that Sox was the one who was able to crack it. But when you have a computer trying to solve a problem for that long, that's what happened.
Right. It's very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in that way.
Yeah.
That Earth is the computer. It's like, yeah, Sox is the computer. And he's just been working on this one problem for 40 years, and now he solved it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was a very clever way to almost not have the solution really come to fruition for an extremely long period of time.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they really set it up fast, too, which is the idea that, like, Buzz goes in, he's on, like, the secret mission now because, like, nobody wants him to go on it anymore. And so he's having to, like, kind of hide behind things to, like, go through and make the container.
Yeah.
But promptly then falls on the ingredients.
Right. So that, they very quickly are just like, okay, it's not that you have the solution, it's that this is the only one now.
This is the only one. Yeah. Like now it has to work. And sure enough, it does work.
Right.
But then what I thought was very interesting about the movie is it starts to take this like the whole thing from then on out is almost a video game. Like almost everything about it is it's like level 1 was, can you create the container?
Right.
And then every other level is then protecting the container and going on side quests and trying to do all of these things so that you can eventually
go beat Zurg.
Yeah, get it to where it's supposed to go.
Right.
Or
ultimately, I guess, not get it anywhere.
True, yeah, it doesn't end up going anywhere at all. But so he comes back, he lands, he is promptly saved by Izzy, who is now Alicia's granddaughter.
Who is, now, like, fully grown.
Out in the field, but not even at rookie level.
Right, yeah. Like, we're hoping to be rookies.
Yeah. We're not quite there yet. So you get, like, the total band of, kind of misfit toys in terms of, like, what his Legion is going to be. One of whom, I have to tell you, is Taika Waititi.
Yes.
Mo Morrison, which I think also then kind of, like, held up the mantle with Sox of just being absolutely hilarious throughout the entire story.
Yeah, they did a really good job. Like, so many points in the movie, they, like, they were really good at being very efficient with all of the time on screen.
Yeah.
Like, every single time they encounter a problem, it's like they would introduce a problem in the moment that ended up being a solution later on.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like, oh, don't pull this cord, I surrender. And it's like, oh yeah, then later on, they pull that cord in a useful way.
Right.
Or like, oh, he keeps playing with the pen, but later on the pen is useful. And
the payoff on the pen was amazing.
Yes, the payoff. The pen.
I need like something small and thin.
Yeah. My time is here. Ben. Yeah, then he has it later in the arm.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, because it's like his chest plate to begin with.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I loved the pen. I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, the pen was very good.
Basically, now you have like Buzz's worst nightmare. So, like, from the beginning, he does not want to work with a rookie, let alone people who haven't even qualified as that yet.
Right. Basically, the only person he was ever willing to work with was his first partner, Alicia.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then everybody else is just going to be a hindrance, which I think brings you to another theme of the movie, which is sort of this idea that like Buzz absolutely feels like he needs to be like doing these things on his own. Like he cannot accept help.
Right.
Which I think was like another cool way that applies to so many people right now, which is like that difficulty of asking somebody for help. It's like, we're all in this together, at the end, like you don't have to do everything on your own. But that's a huge lesson that Buzz needs to learn.
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie did, like, really, like, targets down, like, the ways in which you identify, like, yourself a little bit.
Right.
But possibly falsely. Like, Buzz's whole personality, his entire identity is tied to being a space ranger. Like, if he can't do that, who is he at all? And like the more he has to like break away from that throughout the movie, the more he finds out like who he really is. And he like meets, of course, another version of himself who is still tied to all of those beliefs like so directly that Buzz can see very firsthand like the toxic nature like this is taken on his life. But I think like then if you want to peel it back out into the real world, that's just like if whatever your job is, like if like how much does what your career is define who you are as a person, and like is that how it should be? And like probably not. Like I think you and I have both been reading the book Think Again
Yes.
by Adam Grant. It felt like very well timed to be reading that book and watch this movie because it seems like it tackles a lot of almost the exact same things.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think that like, yeah, one of the notes that I wrote down is that like, it's this idea that you don't have to stick to your old ideals. But it's almost like you know how those ideals fit.
Yeah.
And therefore, again, it's very scary. It's worrisome to let go of that and see, kind of what else is there.
Right. It's like, and they do it in a lot of like sneaky ways too. Like even early in the movie, like Buzz is like going to eat dinner and he just has this cool little like microwave pack. He like shakes and it is immediately ready.
Right.
But then he pulls the food out and it looks gross.
It does. It does.
And
It looks absolutely awful.
And Buzz is just chowing down on it like this is completely normal. And then later in the movie, like they go and get sandwiches and like even the sandwiches are different. They're like meat bread meat instead of bread meat bread.
I loved how
yeah.
much they were like, how long were you doing it the other way?
Yeah, like everyone is like so adapted to this other way, which you, the audience, of course, know is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Juicy fingers. Yeah.
That's the best part.
The best part, right? No, yeah, it's so funny. But it's like Buzz is so set in his ways that he would rather have his gross microwave thing than this other kind of sandwich.
Right.
Which is different from even sandwiches he's familiar with.
Sure.
And it's just like, it's silly because like both options are sort of wrong, and yet both camps are like, this is the only way.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is like one of those things where I think he's like, it's like he does ultimately try it, and it's like he's kind of pleasantly surprised,
Right.
by like, there is something to
good.
this.
That was good. I feel like the movie had a couple of like big emotional moments. I think first of all when you have to go through the whole scene where Alicia is like dying, that was tough.
Like what
Yeah.
I thought through the hologram.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
That was rough. But then I thought the other one was like when Buzz has his like big come to moment towards the like when he's talking to the older version of himself, and like he's immediately on board, like that's a good plan. We should go back and fix the timeline or whatever, or reset everything. And then he's just like, yep, all that won't have happened. And then he sort of has this like realization that like, but wait, that means like everything won't have happened. So like my partner won't have fallen in love and she wouldn't have had kids and my new friends won't even exist. And
right.
it's like
that was, I thought, like a very, very cleverly written aspect of this movie was sort of the way in which you don't really get to watch Alicia live any of her life other than like these kind of like blips every single time Buzz gets home from one of the missions. And it's like, he comes home and she's engaged, and then he comes home again and she's pregnant, and then he comes home again and there's like a little baby present, and then like you fast forward like the 40 years, and now like that baby is like a grown man who's now like a part of Star Command himself.
Right.
While Buzz is so determined to do what he thinks life's purpose is, he's actively missing out on what Alicia is learning it's actually all about.
Right.
And it's like when it comes down to it, it's like, yes, Alicia got like marooned on this planet. And yes, that meant that she was going to be destined to live the rest of her life there. But she also learned how to adapt to that, how to like accept the reality around her, and basically then go on to like live a very meaningful life.
Right.
Because I think that there's a point, Izzy gets really upset and she's like worried that like her grandmother's like life didn't matter. And I think Buzz actually like reassures her it's like it mattered.
Yeah.
Because you're here.
Right.
Like that is like what it brought us. And I even think that that's a huge part of how they start to have like Buzz starting to like come around, the horn again a little bit in terms of like getting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then anyway, so Buzz also has to face down himself.
Yes.
Which was very interesting because like
it's not what you think is going to happen based on what happens in Toy Story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the other big question that I had coming into this movie. It's like, how on earth do you pull off Zurg?
Right.
Because it's like Zurg is such a comical, like sort of caricature of Darth Vader.
Right.
Like in Toy Story 2, that it's like there's not really a good way to have like a real Zurg, not just maybe actually be Darth Vader, Like how do you go about doing that without it just being like a total ripoff?
No, Buzz. I am your father.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome as ever to the Scenic Route, which this week is brought to you by Honey. Let me just tell you, it is mighty scenic today. I mean, beautiful. Am I right? And I'll tell you guys what, these days I feel like I am shopping online all of the time, and I am always on the hunt for a great deal. But coupon codes are just not readily available like they used to be. You know, it's not like you just go to the back of the newspaper and clip something out, take it to the store, easy peasy. Actually, I'm not gonna lie to you, that sounds straight up awful. I don't want to do that. But you know what I mean, right? Like, finding promo codes on the internet can sometimes be just as hard. You gotta dig for them. Luckily though, thanks to Honey, this is a total thing of the past. When you get the checkout, you simply activate it and it will scour the entire interweb for the best available coupon code and automatically apply it for you. And I've got to tell you that it is summer, and there is nothing that I love more than sitting around a campfire at night and just enjoying time with friends, which also means that usually what I'm eating is takeout, and specifically I mean pizza. Honey absolutely always comes in clutch when ordering pizza. In fact, just this past weekend, I was ordering from my favorite pie place, got to checkout, activated Honey, and boom, saved 20%. Like it's nothing. But it's not nothing, it's 20%. And Honey doesn't just work for desktop, it works on your iPhone too. Simply fire it up inside of Safari and you're on your way to saving. The thing is, if you're not already using Honey, you could just literally be missing out on free savings. And by signing up for it, you're doing yourself a solid and supporting the show at the same time, which we thank you for. And absolutely best of all, it is free. Just simply head on over to joinhoney.com/J versus B. I would never recommend something that I don't personally use myself. Again, head on over to joinhoney.com/J versus B. It is absolutely free, and the link is in the description down below.
All right, guys, real quick, before Ben gets back, I need to talk to you about undies, specifically me undies. Like, is it just me, or are you guys also like totally booked up and busy like all summer? It just feels like every weekend is stuffed with pool days, vacations, outdoor events, conventions, you name it, we're there. Honestly, it's a tough season, but thank goodness for me undies for helping me stay comfortable throughout all this travel and outdoor play and stuff, because the last thing you want when you're out and about is a sweaty butt. And I'll tell you what, I wear me undies throughout the year, but I specifically love the styles and shapes they offer for their swimsuits. When you're comfy and feeling good, you're more present to enjoy all of your summer plans. It's like science or something. MeUndies has the lightest, most breathable fabrics to keep you cool and comfortable wherever you go. From undies, bralettes, and socks to loungewear and swimwear, you can find something for all your plans. MeUndies also releases new prints all the time, like their limited edition Pride collection. You can match with your partner, friend, or even your dog. Find your ultimate summer comfort in sizes extra small to 4XL. MeUndies has a great offer for our viewers. If you are a first-time purchaser, you can get 15% off. And for a limited time, if you sign up for the free-to-join MeUndies membership program, you can get 25% off your first membership item. So to get 15% off your first order and 25% off your first membership item and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, you can head over to MeUndies.com/JVerseB. One more time, that's MeUndies.com/JVerseB. Link is in the description down below.
You're starting to suspect, okay, like Zerg is someone, like probably his father, and you know, he steps out and because he's gotten so much older, Buzz's first instinct is like, Dad?
Yeah. Well, it's like, it is interesting because, yeah, you see Zerg and he comes in and he's like definitely threatening and better than the other robots, but he like finds Buzz's ship, which says Buzz Lightyear on it, and that like, they do a good job of like letting you know he could have read the name, but they don't like zoom in on the name or something.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But then he like knows like, oh, Buzz is back, which of course is what he's looking for
in the first place.
Yeah.
Because he's really just arrived on scene. He's only been there for like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Even that was a nice little like plot hole they like filled back in later in the movie, because it was like Buzz came in and he's been gone for 22 years and Alicia comes in and saves him and she's like, yeah, they showed up a week ago, and I'm like, man, what are the odds?
Oh right,
they showed up one week ago, and it's like, no, they showed up a week ago because Buzz is specifically looking for Buzz and he knows this is when he's gonna get here.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, can I just say that, yeah, this is only like very barely related, but there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where he's doing his first mission and he has to do the math.
Oh, I loved it.
Wasn't that amazing?
That was so good.
Yes.
He pulls out like the little like handheld chart and it's just like, Yes. Astronaut. I'm very smart.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
math. Okay, this will work. I'm going to do this. Yeah, it was just like, oh my gosh, like what a very, very, very cool way to go about that exact thing.
Yes. I totally loved that. It felt very like right out of The Martian or something.
It definitely did.
Yeah.
It definitely did. Yeah. So that was really like just one of those cool like space movie moments. And it's like if you know just barely enough about space at all, it's like, oh, he's doing it like the old school way instead of like listening to the computer. Even.
Right. I thought that maybe this is like the minorest of complaints. I thought the amount of times they had Buzz say out loud how many times he didn't like rookies or artificial intelligence, like in the first 5 minutes, I was like, okay, I get it, man.
Oh, I would agree with that. Yeah, it was like, I don't like it doesn't need to be like this strictly reinforced, like into our like way of thinking about this particular character. It's like you could have said it one time and it'd be like, oh yeah, he doesn't like rookies, got it. Like it was basically the first thing we learned about him, so it's not hard for that to like not be a piece of the foundational information that we then know about the character. I also felt like they did the gag where the artificial intelligence sort of like did that. Like we still have this problem, if you're ever trying to like talk to Siri and like, it doesn't perfectly understand you or something.
Yeah.
I did feel like that gag was maybe overdone a little bit, like where it kept being like, are those your last words?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, it's not very good AI. Although, okay, so that was a question that I had as I like walked out of the theater and I was rethinking about it, was they did make a really big point. The rookies are very obvious. Like, Buzz doesn't want to work with someone who's more qualified than the team he ultimately like picks to be his team in the end. Mm-hmm. Is there a moment like where AI pays off for him? Or like you understand like why like his distrust of like computers is coming into play?
I guess Socks is AI.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. He does at the very end. He's just like, Ivan, good to see you again.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. So he eventually like does come all the way around. It is hilarious that I was not even thinking of Socks as AI.
Exactly.
I feel like
he's a real Sock. Does Socks have a soul?
Does Socks? Oh, that's a good question. Okay, on the note of Socks again, as long as we're talking about him, I felt like the other thing they did so well was all of the little mannerisms that like a kitten might have.
Yeah.
Like where it would like sleep on its paws or like sort of like curl up around your legs.
Yeah, when he plays the laser game with himself.
Oh yeah,
that was amazing.
Like the little things that like Socks is then like randomly capable of doing, like having like the tranquilizer dart.
Yeah,
it's like
I bought you 5 minutes.
Right, but it's like you can even understand why in this like kind of militaristic world where this like robotic support animal might have a feature that involves subduing the person that they're like supposed to be there for.
Yeah.
It's almost like being in like a ward or something like that. It's like in case something really bad happens and we need you to not like, be a danger to yourself or someone else, like there's the safety protocol. So like even the fact that like it had this tranq dart didn't just feel like Socks was like a total Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
It just like, it's like, that's a reasonable thing for this particular little doodad to have.
Man, Socks was just great. Everything he did was funny.
It was really, really funny. I very much enjoyed Socks. And again, pleasantly surprised.
So then there's a few little like post-credit things that were pretty interesting. So there's a few things that do go unresolved in the movie that I feel like ultimately are setting you up for like Lightyear 2, I guess. Lightyear 2 Infinity.
That is what they'll call it.
Yeah. Something they don't resolve. They show you that Zurg is Buzz. And
Hold up, I'm sorry. 2 Infinity, 2 Beyond.
2 Infinity, 2 Beyond. Oh, man.
As a possible other sequel idea. Okay, I'm sorry. I interrupted. I hope I didn't throw you off.
No, not at all. They show you that Buzz, like, he's like, I traveled into the future where the technology was so far advanced beyond what we could have imagined here. But then he even says, like, these things were like, oh, yeah, I borrowed them. And it's just like, borrowed them, but it's like, what he borrowed was like the Zurg suit and the Zurg ship. And it's like, that means that whilst he was Zurg in this movie, he's not the real Zurg.
It's very true. Yeah, like that was one of those things that I did feel like they sort of were just like, and this is fine. I found a ship and was able to single-handedly subdue it, and now I am the leader of that ship.
Right.
And I've also like was able to fit into the Zurg outfit, design or whatever.
Right.
All of those things were definitely like, that's awfully convenient. Like that you happen to find these things out there, which I do absolutely agree means that like, while in this version of Lightyear, Zurg is just himself from the future.
Yeah.
that I also think that it does mean that there's a different Zurg out there with a different mission who had their ship stolen by Buzz. Who then also now is going to hate Buzz because he stole his ship.
Absolutely.
And the fact that there are two different Buzzes will not sway.
Because the Buzz that stole the ship is just going to look like young Buzz.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly would be the case.
Why does Zurg have an axe to grind with Buzz now?
Yeah, now he has like a personal beef with Buzz Lightyear.
So one of the funny things is I almost felt like they tried to give you like this little like origin story to like why it's called Zurg.
Oh, that I think is also part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were like, oh, that's all they can say is Zurg.
Yeah.
And it was like... it was like one of those moments where I was like, are you trying to make the connection that like you told them that your name was Buzz and all they could say was Zurg? Like back as if like Zurg and Buzz were like, as far as they were concerned, effectively saying the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be like they didn't really understand.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's all they could say. Weird, right? And it's like, no, that's going to mean something.
It definitely will mean something. Yeah.
Like, because they kept calling it like the Zurg suit or the Zurg ship. Like, at no point was he referred to as like evil Emperor Zurg.
True.
You know, and there's like the scene in Toy Story where Buzz is talking to Woody and he's like, Emperor Zurg is poised on the edge of the galaxy with a, whatever weapon of mass destruction or something. It's like, that wasn't in there. But I have a feeling that's what to Infinity, to Beyond is going to be about, is Zurg and his like Death Star weapon, and the real Zurg, not Buzz Zurg, is going to be in there. And then the question is who's that Zurg, right?
The question will be, who is that Zurg? And will it just be Buzz's father? Because at that point in time, it's like, dude, there's something up with your fam.
There's something up with your fam. But that wouldn't even surprise me, because like when Buzz sees himself, like in his mind, he quickly connects the dots. Like, it's possible and believable that this might be my dad.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, whatever happened to Buzz's father in his life must have involved him getting lost in space.
Sure.
Sure. Like, who knows? Maybe that's why he became a space ranger.
Right.
Something like that.
Could be. Yeah. So they definitely left the door open in a bunch of different ways, and the fact that you really do get all the way to the end of those post credits and Zurg like comes back to life. It's like, okay, It's not over.
Right. Even that, it made me think of Toy Story 2, because it's like there's two Buzzes in Toy Story 2.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's so true.
Right?
That's so true. Oh, how trippy is that?
Yeah.
So then the question might start to become too, do you think that if this is the movie that Andy watched before the birthday party where he receives this Buzz Lightyear toy, then the Buzz Lightyear with like the belt that he encounters inside of Al's toy barn would have like been the accessories that came out
from toys from To Lightyear to Infinity or whatever.
To Lightyear
to Infinity.
To Infinity to Beyond.
To Infinity to Beyond.
That's very interesting.
So this is another interesting thing, is that like this suit that this Buzz is wearing, they are not wearing in the movie at all until like the very, very end of the movie.
True.
Which like the whole time I was like, it's surprising to me that the Buzz Lightyear Andy got had like the arm laser and the wings, because he doesn't seem to have either of those things. And like I loved throughout the movie how he like strapped on an arm laser and like makeshifted it and like eventually like used the eject function to like make wings.
Oh, I will say, like I almost feel like they could have done a lot more with the eject function, because I kept wondering, like, because the red button on his suit is the one that makes his wings pop out, right?
Yeah. In this one, yeah.
In this one. Yeah, and so it was so interesting to me that the red button on their suits kind of made you this like giant raspberry.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a really like odd departure from like,
I know. I was like, this is the most iconic button on the toy, and it gives him the wings. Like you cannot change it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that's a creative liberty that they took there. Yeah. But so like when he finally does pull the ejector seat or whatever and the wings pop off, I almost felt like they could have slow-moed that scene and had him like in space, like having the thing pop out, like the wings pop open, because I was like,
I mean, they kind of did.
The wings So,
Yeah.
Well, then I think they could have gone harder.
They could have. They did give you that hero shot where it was like, oh, he's got the wings and the laser.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
That's right. Oh, speaking about being in space, though, there is a shot in this movie where Izzy is floating between 2 points in space. It was horrifying.
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's scary.
I think the thing that it did for space is when she's standing at the door and he like looks down and you
Yeah.
look down into just like vast nothingness, and it was like I had never considered space like that before.
Yeah.
But then it's even funnier because Sox is like, don't look down or up.
Yeah.
It's like even that. So like I just finished reading the book Ender's Game again, where like one of the big like sentiments that he learns in battle school is that like the enemy's gate is down.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like it's like by everybody agreeing that they know like the direction.
Yeah.
It like helps orient literally everything else.
Yeah.
Because it just means like the one fixed point that we have is down. So assume everything else is based off of that orientation. But even that was almost like don't look down or up.
Right.
Because like as far as anybody's concerned, they're the same.
They're the same.
You know?
There is no down or up. It's just wherever the ship is oriented right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did a great job. I even thought that the inclusion of like Izzy being afraid of space was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Just like to have been, the granddaughter of like one of the most noteworthy
Right.
space rangers.
Because
of
like
all
it's
time.
silly because like you're watching a space movie and it's like you're on a different planet of Earth. How could someone who lives on a planet outside of Earth be afraid of space? But it's like she was born there and has never left the atmosphere. Of course she'd be afraid of space the same way that anyone on Earth might be afraid of space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like, that is an interesting inclusion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Very
a
good.
funny way to like kind of spin it around a little bit there. Otherwise, yeah, I feel like with this movie, I felt like across the board, it was way funnier than I thought it was going to be. Like it was able to like consistently make me laugh just basically from start to finish. with
Yeah.
it. Like I just kept laughing. It was never like, gut busting or anything like that, but it was like, this is funny.
I thought the way they set up the like when the robots hit the transporter button, it sends it to the same spot on the ship. And then like eventually like they did such a good job setting up like the rules of like this zap, it brings you back to the ship.
Oh yes.
And then like, okay, they showed you that like 3 times and then they like turned it into a joke from there.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
I think the robots just keep falling.
I loved when who was Mo Morrison, who's
Yeah.
my type of guy. Yeah, I loved when he just keeps dropping the pod.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's kind of cool. I was like, that's exactly what I would have said. Like,
Hey,
look at this.
I created a loop.
Right? Yeah, just goes on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool. I thought that like the themes of the movie were all very straightforward. I felt like on the whole, it didn't take itself too seriously.
Mhm.
Like it's like a very fast-paced movie. It all happens very quickly. Like I actually was like, man, I can't believe it's over. When it was over. But like the only thing that I would say about it as far as like a like compared to other Pixar movies is that it is very just kind of like straightforward. Like the plot moves like in one, consistent straight line, and it doesn't like really super deviate from that. Like Buzz really is kind of like your main center focus throughout the entire thing. Like I would say, without having had like more time to like spend and think about the themes and stuff, it didn't have like the same level of like profound that a lot of the other films that we've sort of gone through recently, like, Soul or Inside Out.
Mhm.
It may have been more like in the territory of like Luca, where it's kind of like the stakes for Luca are not that huge. It's like
Sure.
they're competing in like a locally sponsored like triathlon eating competition,
Right.
from like a restaurant.
But at that rate, because they've positioned this as a movie inside of a movie, like there aren't stakes at all, even.
Well,
You know?
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true as well. Like at no point in time did you really feel like the story couldn't just conclude somehow. But although if you want to get meta like that, that's even kind of interesting because it's almost like, how can any movie lull you into the idea that there are stakes ever when they're all movies? Like they all
Sure.
have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, this is a movie that like we know that Andy watched. So it's like, it has to have a beginning, a middle, and end. It has to have a happy ending. Like,
Right.
it has to all work out.
Right, like a 10-year-old boy needs to be able to watch this and make it his favorite movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was something that I thought would be very interesting to try to see if we can't pair up with Andy's life as we sort of like watch Andy grow up throughout the years. Is there anything to the idea that Andy is actually taking some of the lessons you could learn from the movie of Lightyear and then applying those themes to his own life?
Oh, interesting.
Like, is there anything to the idea that like Andy, grew up like without a father, so he was sort of like solo in some regards? Like, could he relate to Buzz in that capacity?
I mean, I think that you don't even need this movie for that with Andy though, because it's like he's already like at no point does he have a father, and then like the two toys he looks up to the most are like both of these like high stereotype masculine like leadership figures.
Exactly. Yeah, they're both sort of like the law enforcement-y type of
local law enforcement.
Yeah.
They didn't say that in this movie.
They did not say
Sadly.
that. They said so. Oh, the one thing I kept thinking was going to happen was
terrain is unstable. That's what it was. Anyway, go ahead.
The train, yeah. I kept thinking they were going to say falling with style, which I was thinking would be interesting because in the movie, the Toy Story, Buzz doesn't use the term
right. He
style.
learns that.
Right.
Yeah.
But like Woody is the one who describes it that way. But it would have been funny if like Buzz was almost like, it's like if Izzy was like, I flew, and it's like, it was more falling with style.
Yeah,
like,
that would have been funny.
Yeah, it feels like it would have been the type of like slight that he would have been like not quite giving her enough credit for having done something over.
Yeah, that would have been funny. But you're right. Then then Toy Buzz should have accepted falling with style.
There is that. Although it seems that is another funny thing about it is that while the Buzz Lightyear action figure that Andy buys is the Buzz that we see at the end of the movie, it does seem like Buzz's character is more who we meet at the beginning of the movie of Lightyear, just happens to be in the suit he's wearing at the end.
Right, that's true. I thought this is also like a funny like meta thing. Like, this is the toy they sold to the kids, even though he's not in this costume at all.
That is interesting.
It's like, but that's what they do. That's what they do in the real world.
Okay, so
like if the character appeared in any costume at all in the movie, you can buy every single version of that character.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
So why is it then? And this is going to be like one of the questions I feel like we have to like try to like theorize or answer. Is like, why didn't any of like the other characters make it to the shelves?
Oh, that is a great question. I feel like I was thinking about this morning, and it's like, okay, first of all, this movie was obviously insanely popular because Buzz Lightyear the toy was not created enough to meet demand or whatever.
Right. Yeah. There's like that line where
short-sighted retailers are yes. That is a real thing in Toy Story. That is an effect of this movie. Is now what they're going with, right? So to that end, to me, what it says is that Al of Al's Toy Barn is like an even worse person because he like refused to stock any of the other characters who would have all been like elderly or of different races or women.
That's so true. That's so true.
Or socks. He doesn't even stock socks. It's like this. It's like, now, obviously, when they made Toy Story 2, this movie didn't exist. So why would they have done that at all? But now it does exist, which means Al. What does that say about Al?
Nothing good.
Nothing good, which is okay because he's already the bad guy.
He's already the punching bag to begin with. I'm okay with that explanation. I mean, that certainly seems like a good way to go about it. But yeah, that's very interesting. I'd also be very curious if there's any other reference at any other point in time to any of the characters that we could like kind of formulate from things that Buzz says.
Oh, I got something, but I think we might save it for.
Okay, save it for another day.
Save it for another day.
Okay. On that note, then, I feel like we're at the point. Do you feel like you can kind of give it like your overall assessment of the movie and your score out of 100?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally can. I think, and I feel like this is just a fitting number based on Lightyear stuff. I'm going with 95.
Oh,
you get it?
Wait. Oh yeah, 90 because this one came out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you loved it.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just a fun time the whole time. It gives you like those nostalgic Toy Story feels, but it's not like, because it's a movie in a movie, it's not even fan service. In a weird way, it makes Toy Story fan service to this movie, which is like backwards.
Take that, the first ever computer animated movie of all time.
Yeah. Way to be self-referential 20 years later.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so I feel like I absolutely loved I loved the movie too. I thought it was super funny. I thought it was super fun, straightforward. Again, I feel like it didn't necessarily need to take itself too seriously. I thought it had some good themes that were like easy to sort of like digest and understand. I think they're very like, topical to the world at the moment, and sort of finding that sort of general sense of, meaning and purpose is something that I think a lot of people tend to face, myself included. I would say the only thing that basically I would have like docked points for at all is largely just that I feel like I almost think that it could have gone harder on some of those themes. Like I almost feel like it could have like it could have leaned in a bit more, could have been maybe a tad bit more profound, less like action hero movie. And not even really that I think you need to exclude any action hero movie stuff that was included. I think you could just add other bits of fleshing out some of the themes.
Sure.
So basically where I landed at an 84.
84.
Pretty
solid.
And that's the thing. Like I left the movie theater. I called my wife Alice, and she was like, "What'd you think?" And everybody knows that I typically do not like to talk about any of the movies upon walking out until we've been able to record our review. However, I did tell her that I liked the movie in the car, which I was like,
wow,
man,
look at you.
I basically
getting outside your comfort zone.
I know.
Oh, speaking of getting outside your comfort zone, we should probably address that this is the first animated movie ever to feature an on-screen same-sex kiss.
Oh, I love the fact that didn't even seem like I don't even know what the right way to say it is, but like I was just like, yeah, sure.
I know.
Like even the way that like Buzz was just sort of like, I can't wait to meet her.
I know.
And it was like, even that, it was like, it just fit like a glove to me.
Yes.
I was just like,
I thought it was handled so well. It was like, in no way is the point of the movie like about like that at all.
Sure.
It's like, it's just an accepted normal part of life. That's it.
Yeah.
Great. And it's like, no need to draw that much. Like, it's like, and that makes like the message, I think, that much stronger.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like just again, it's like this is a commonplace thing. Like, So
right.
Yeah, that was very cool. And again, across the board, I mean, it's a super diverse cast. I thought that everybody was great. I was afraid I was going to hear Steve Rogers through Chris Evans. With Buzz, and I didn't.
Oh, that's good.
Which I thought was great.
They are similar-esque.
Mm-hmm. Like in terms of the action hero-ness of them.
Yeah.
But I thought the whole voice cast did great. I was obsessed. I mean, Taika Waititi, I think right now is just like, he's crushing it. Yeah.
He's great.
Even Korg in like Thor Ragnarok is also voiced by Taika, and it was just like, I felt like this character Mo had like some similar like beats, and I was like, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. It's all good.
I'll take as much Taika voicing as we can possibly get.
Put him in everything.
Yeah,
let him direct a Pixar movie. I'd watch it.
Maybe he'll do To Infinity, To Beyond.
To Infinity, To Beyond, directed by Taika Waititi.
Right.
That'd be amazing.
If they just followed all of the Fast and the Furious formulas, what would Tokyo Drift be?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you have to go back to Lightyear 3, like Jupiter Drift or something. Guys, quick reminder, this Friday we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Super Carlin Brothers right here on the main channel by hosting a trivia live stream. We're going to have games, we're going to have prizes, we're going to be celebrating. It's going to be so much fun. We hope to see you there. Information should be on the screen right now. Set your calendars for the event. 10 years of Super Carlin Brothers. Thanks for watching this entire time. We'll see you there.
All right, so as many Fast and Furious themed Buzz Lightyear names that you can possibly come up with in the comments down below. Otherwise, just let us know, what did you think of the movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was funny? Was there anything that, caught you off guard or surprised you in any way, shape, or form? Let us know.
Otherwise, until next time,
bye!